Well, good morning. Greetings in Jesus. What a privilege to be here with you. My apologies that you have to listen to me, but hopefully, with the Spirit's help, we can share something that will help, be inspiring, be encouraging to us. So I greet you in Jesus, the one who we want to lift high through the service. I really realize we have a problem. Back in the late 1800s, the church leaders were distraught with the number of young folks that were migrating out of their church, and they were trying to figure out, well, what could they do about that? At that point of time, they met once a month for worship because of geographically where they were located, the distance between them. They only once a month, so they decided to meet oftener because the children were going to school. They were being influenced more by the teacher on throughout this week, and they come to church for 1 hour, 2 hours on a Sunday morning, and that was it. So they decided to have more church. Well, this morning, and maybe they're sitting right in the middle here, we have a problem. Because all week, you were being entertained. How were you entertaining yourself? Now, I don't know. I'm jumping to conclusions. But quite frequently, every moment that you were free, you pulled something out and you looked at it. And what were you looking at? You were entertaining yourself in some way, maybe playing a game or doing something. It's called a cell phone. So I'm not going to entertain you this morning. Sorry, people. And that is at least Gary Miller says, our next biggest tsunami as far as electronics. How will we navigate? How will we survive the influx of information, entertainment that comes to us and that is so close? Because this morning you have to think. You're going to have to sit there, and hopefully you can keep your cell phone in your pocket. Don't text buddy or anything that is hot or anything up front here. Just leave that away, and we'll think about the Lord. Well, I told you a couple of weeks ago, and it's good I told you, because if I wouldn't have told you, I probably would have skipped out. I told you I'm going to talk about singles, but I also realized that today is Grandparents' Day. And if you remember last week, there was a little thing on your back of your bulletin. Ed remembered. I'm not sure if anybody else remembered. What was the question on the back of your bulletin, or the thought on the back of your bulletin last Sunday? Anybody remember? Who remembers? Ed, tell us. All right. I thought maybe this morning we could spend a little time, and I just like... and I don't just want the older folks to talk. I like the youth to talk too. You can talk, yeah? And that mic, if they bring that mic around, won't hurt you. It doesn't shock you or anything. To share how grandparents, because I'm thinking about, sometimes as grandparents, we're not quite sure always how we're needed, or how do we influence, how do we affect the next generation. The only place in the Bible that it specifically names or has the word grandparent is in 2 Timothy 1:5, where Paul is talking to Timothy, and he talks about to Timothy about his grandmother loss and his mother Eunice, that they had the faith was in them, and they passed it on to Timothy, and they blessed him with a knowledge, with an understanding, with raising him in a way to serve the Lord, and that was Paul was attracted to, and Paul continued to build on the groundwork that they had put there for him. Sometimes, and I hope as grandparents we do more than just have the grandchildren over and we sugar them up, we spoil them, and then send them home. There's more to being a grandparent than just doing that for our grandchildren. I remember one time one person made the comment that as a grandparent, you will know if you have trained your children when you see your grandchildren. And then you realize it's too late to be able to change that. So if you're parenting now, it's good to give it all you got and hopefully not make too many mistakes. You will make some mistakes, I'm sure, but that we will try to do it in the fear of God. So we think about grandparents and just the blessing grandparents can be to us. And I figure, well, if I'm asking you to share about your grandparents, well, I better at least be willing to share a little bit what I remember. And I know this is different for each person because for some of us, my grandparents were always old. They were really old. Now, they were older when I came along. So I think I think they were at least 60. The youngest I would remember them. So they were ripe old at that point. So I have two things to share. I remember my grandparents on my mother's side, my mother's parents. I remember probably the biggest highlight was Christmas Day. We would go to Grandma's house. We didn't go in the sleigh. I'm not that old. We didn't go in the sleigh. We went, drove to Grandma's, and she made, it seemed like an extreme amount of food that we enjoyed together as a family. And maybe the better part was, and she gave us gifts in the afternoon. And she blessed us as grandchildren in that way. And that's one of the memories I have on that set of grandparents. On my father's side, I remember probably more about my grandma than my grandpa, but this was kind of reiterated to me at a reunion we had a year or two ago. But my grandma, we call her Grandma Weaver, she was the type of lady that reached out to the outcast, the social outcast. And I forgot all about this lady, but it was, people have funny names, have unique characteristics sometimes. But there was a lady called Emma Schwer that my grandma reached out to, and I had known very little about this lady, but she was a lady that my grandma ministered to, and other people that she would took under her wing and ministered to. And that, in some ways, impacted me of thinking of how she was willing to, I wouldn't say she had a lot in material wealth, but she wanted to reach out and do that. The other thing I remember about my grandma, I can still remember going to her house and walking in there, and especially in the fall time, she'd have some apple schnitz on the radiator drying. I can still remember that and the smells of that house, my 50 plus years ago. But I can still remember that. So, young folks, you have a good mind, don't waste it. You might be amazed at things you'll remember when you get old too. All right. Well, how did your grandparents bless you? I told Eric to have a mic, so I think him and Wilmer are set to go. Don't be bashful. I like you young folks. You share something. Don't let it be 20 sentences. Can just be. Who's going to be first? Well, way back at Randall. Good. Praise the Lord.
I feel very blessed to have Christian grandparents. I know my mom's side, my grandpa, he passed away 4.5 years ago from cancer, and I have a lot of memories, good memories of him. When I was thinking about sharing, I was like, boy, I don't know what I'm going to share because I have a lot of good memories. But one thing I remembered was, at Christmas time, he would for lunch, he would pray for everybody by name, the whole way down through the family. That sticks with me yet. So I'm very thankful for having the opportunity of him in my life.
Praise the Lord. Thank you, Randall. Wilmer, go ahead.
My grandma from my mother's side really always was our favorite. Not that the others weren't special either, but she was just overly special. Every birthday, every grandchild would get a card, and she would write nice little things in there and give us a piece of gum. It wasn't much, but it meant the world to us. So I'm very thankful. My dad's mother, I never did see her. She died before I was able to know. But my grandpa on my dad's side would give us a soda, even though it was Diet Coke. But when we mowed their lawn, we got a Diet Coke, and it was never cold. It was always warm, but it was still special.
Okay. You hearing, grandparents? It's not big stuff, right? It's not the big things that the grandchildren remember, so hope it'll encourage you. Who's next? Brother Art, Wilmer up here. Brother Art wants to.
My grandpa good, he loved the Lord. He served as a superintendent in Sunday school, and he passed it on to his son. He served as superintendent in Sunday school and as a preacher and as a bishop. He passed it on to his son. He served as superintendent and a preacher, passed it on to his son, and he served as a minister and passed it on to his son. He's serving as a superintendent today.
Legacy. Wow. Good. Wait, Wilmer, turn around. Helen. Oh, it's the wrong side, but you can give it to her.
I want to encourage our young folks. I think back when my grandfather was widowed. My grandmother died relatively young, and my grandfather was in his 80s maybe or something. As my teen years, we often spent the night at his house because of the distance where we lived away from the youth group. And Grandpa Zimmerman always wanted to take us somewhere on a Sunday afternoon. Now, as a teenager, what do you want to do on a Sunday afternoon? The last thing you want to do is spend with your grandpa. But he loved trains. He wanted to take us on train rides. He wanted to do so much. And yet we were tired because we were out late Saturday night or whatever. And I think about that a lot. I regret the fact that I did not spend more time with him. And so for our youth and our young people, please spend a little bit of your time with your grandparents, because you'll never regret it. You don't know what it means to them. And then you don't have to live with the regrets that I have to live with, that I did not spend more time with my grandpa. It would have been a blessing to him, and it would have been a blessing to me. We did spend some time with him, but not near as much as he wanted to.
Okay.
So young people, respect your grandparents. God bless.
Young folks? I didn't hear anything from the young folks yet. Leah?
I thought this was too simple to say, but I remember my Grandpa Burkholder, I don't remember, but Grandma Burkholder, she always peeled our apples for us. And then she cut them in slices and handed them to us.
You know, my wife sometimes thinks she spoiled her children by doing special things for them, so. Any young folks? Next, I have to call some names. Dennis was hoping his grandchild would get up and say something about him. Anybody else? I guess grandparents today don't do that.
I remember my grandpa on my mom's side. I would go with him on deliveries, and people would wonder who he had along sometimes. And it was just something that he said that stuck to me. He would say, "This is my great-granddaughter." And they would look at him, because I'm on the older side of his grandchildren. So they would give him this funny look, and then he would go on to explain, "She's my granddaughter, and she's great." And that's something that stuck with me.
Larry, I'm sorry, I took it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I have some good memories of my grandparents, and Lisa and Rachel will probably remember this too, but every year my grandma and grandpa would have all us girl cousins over for sleepovers. And now I do that occasionally for my nieces and nephews, and I realize how much work it is. So it makes me appreciate all the more what they did put into it. Because I know my grandpa wouldn't get much sleep because he would come down in the middle of the night and say, girls, it's time to go to bed now. So it's just really good memories of them that they took the time to do it.
Very good. Amazing, just small things that you can do. Ella has a thought. Now, this goes way back. Bella's talking.
Yes, it goes way back. This is my great-grandfather. It was my mother's grandfather. I must have been about 8 or 9 when he died, but what I remember was this godly, always a twinkle in his eye, and gave attention and or candy to us children. And he had a long white beard and a mop of white hair. Later in my life, when I read about Abraham in the Bible, I would imagine my great-grandfather. He would have been like Abraham in the Bible.
My grandpa was not a perfect grandpa, but he always walked with a cane and always talked to us about living one day at a time. And us as young people, one day at a time. What do you mean? Well, don't do nothing the day that you shouldn't be doing. Like one day at a time, behave yourself. Well, yes, he was an older man. He was in the business world, so work was definitely important. But you can still only live one day at a time. Now I only learned what he meant, that we can only live one day at a time, because I understand now where he's coming from. He was an older man. He ran the business show, the business farming, until he closed his eyes. Now, to us was, Grandpa, you didn't tell us you were going to die. You were always buying steers, and in the business world, he went home and went to bed and fell asleep after doing the business and transition. But you only live one day at a time. As if it was your last day. He always walked with a cane. But to us, he was never down and out. He was always going. So that was quite a memory of my grandpa.
All right, good. Don't want to bore you. Maybe you're getting bored. No youth, nobody younger than 40 is able to share? Ed wants to share yet. He got up early this morning just to write it out, so he better share.
This is on my father's side. Grandpa Shirk was born in 1914 and Grandma in 1916. Grandpa, as a child, had polio, so it crippled his feet somewhat. He married later in life to Grandma, and later in her life, she got MS and ended up being in a wheelchair. I never remember her walking. So what really sticks out to me, she married a young man that was slightly handicapped in his feet because of the polio, never thinking that later in life, he was the person that would push her around in her wheelchair. And never once, as I spent time there with them, have I ever heard them complain, or they always were happy and cheerful in their lot in life, and it speaks volumes to me today.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Last call. Anybody?
I remember going to Grandpazimmerman's house, and it's raccoons, hard pretzels, and black licorice.
All right. Okay, well, thank you each for sharing what you did. Trust that it encourages our hearts, and to think of how we can, each day, impacting other lives. And hopefully we're concerned about, especially the older folks, we're concerned about our grandchildren and their lives and what they're facing. All right, well, let's transition a little bit. I'd like to think a little bit about our singles this morning, as I promised you that I would, so I thought I better come through with my my promise. I guess the way my mind was going was, as we think about, okay, we have the grandparents, and now we have a group of, so we don't all fit into the grandparenting realm, and not all of us fit into the single group, however that may look. A widow or a widower, never was married, so there's different aspects of being single, but it's all part of the body. And I like to think about, us as a body. Are we reaching? Are we ministering to the different aspects of the folks that are here in our congregation? And sometimes I think what happens is, unintentionally, we get kind of zeroed in the place of life where we're at, and we think, well, everybody else is facing life the way I am. Well, not everybody is. We each are at our own specific place. As a youth, we're at one spot, so we're facing challenges. As married folks, we are facing challenges in a different dimension. As a single person, a young single or a older single person, the challenges are there that they're facing. And we all know that as we age, that brings some other challenges with us as we enter into the sunset years of our life. But what I like to think about, what I like to focus on just a little bit here at the beginning is the idea that, where we're at, whatever phase of life we're at, that we are responsible or have a calling into, and I entitled my message, Maintaining Our Church Health. We keep in the concept that, we're a body. And so the body, as it works together, so each part of us as an individual giving into this organism of the church have a responsibility. Are we bringing health to the congregation? Or are we detracting from the congregation? Or another word we could use would be community. A community that we live. Now, we're not living in a communal, but we are yet a community. We are a group of people that come together with a certain measure of common interests, and we fellowship together, and then the impact that we have to onto the world around us. I had to think about as we think about the responsibility that each one of us has to put into the local congregation is the energy that it takes to, say, keep something going, or even just the energy to, say, maintain this building. It takes a vast amount of energy that not to improve this building, not to change the building, not to take the roof off and to raise it to 10 feet or something like that, but just to maintain what we have. It takes energy. So we clean it, we fix the doors, we do this, we do that, we mow the grass. Amos mows the grass, and we trim the bushes, and we touch up where nicks and so forth paint peels off or whatever, or windows give out, and we replace them. So we're not improving. So when we think about the church, if it's a living organism, it's going to take energy to maintain it. And if we stop maintaining it, stop doing our part to maintain the church, well, it's going to degress. It's going to fall apart. It's going to go to nothing. A while back, I was flying, and I got to thinking, well, I wonder how long we'd have when we're up at 35,000 feet. If the engines all would shut off, how long we'd have till we crash. So, what I did? Not then, but later, I pulled out and asked Google. I think for a 747, about 40,000 feet, you have about 20 minutes to say your last prayers or whatever you want to do. If the engines all of a sudden shut off, till you're going to crash. Because there's no more energy being put into that machine to keep it going. gravity's gonna take over, and it will come down. So as we think about our health and how wherever you're at, whatever season you're at in life, that you're going to be willing to put energy into the health of our church. Now, when we think about singles, my mind was going more towards not the singles, but how we as other folks treat the singles. Now, you might say, well, I'm single and I'm just perfectly happy. I have no qualms. Well, do you remember a couple of Sundays ago, Brother Stanley preached a message about child training? Did that affect me? Well, I think what I wanted to do for child training is all gone. I mean, I don't have any children that I can really impact or take over my knee anymore and spank, or whatever I would choose to do. So maybe this doesn't, but if the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't fit you, then just relax and be happy that you are doing a good job. Of course, some singles are going to struggle in a different place than other ways. And just want Buddy to hear this part. I'm not getting paid for what I'm going to say. Yesterday at the wedding, he thought of, whoever wants to get dismissed first to go for the reception, if they give him some money, they could go first. So I just want to make sure that he's not thinking I'm getting paid by somebody to say these things this morning. I kind of went to a wide variation of places to get some ideas, and perhaps some of the thoughts, I don't have them documented, would be some just little rumblings that you hear at different times, even among our own local congregation in that. All right, well, let's dive in and think about maybe some of the challenges that we would, as other people, married people particularly, why we could make it difficult for individuals that are facing singleness in church, and why they don't find fulfillment in worship, and the struggles that they may face. My first one is that my first point is the other thing about marriage is very short-sighted. In the whole scheme of your life, how much of your life is going to be married? You could be married in eternity? No, we're not going to be married in eternity. So, I don't know. We say we're going to live forever. So 50, 60 years out of forever is not much, right? It's not much. Jesus said we're not going to be married or be given in marriage in our next life. So I think some of that is what affects how we think. We think that sometimes that marriage is the epitome of life. I mean, it's a top. It's if you have reached a marriage, you have reached a goal. It is the best thing that could ever happen to you and to your life. And we think that if somebody else has not gotten to that point, I had to think about, if God would have wanted everybody to be married, wouldn't have He made it that way? That when you're born, there'd be somebody else born of the opposite sex, and you'd be destined when you're from birth that you're going to come together in marriage. Well, at this point in time, there's more males are born than females in the world. So, God didn't make it 50-50. So He must have had reasons to thinking that there is a part for single folks to have. So think about that. How much pressure could we put on people thinking that this is it. When you reach that, you have reached the goal. We'll get to some other points. This may come a little closer to us. My second point is sometimes we have treated marriages as the benchmark for maturity and adulthood. Is that what we think? Now, you may not agree with that, and that's okay. You don't have to agree with me. But as we think about, do we ever think about that? Do we ever think about that? Somebody that's not married, there must be something there just not quite normal. They're just not quite the same as we are. Okay? But I think sometimes it can come closer to us than what we think. I said this at work in the lunchroom a while back. Somehow we got talking about singles, and I said to one of the men there, I said, well, would you believe Jesus teaching more if he would have been married? And he looked at me, and his jaw almost dropped off his face, and thinking about, well, he never thought about that. Jesus was never married, and of course, we believe what Jesus said. It wouldn't have helped in our minds, I don't think, for Jesus to be married that would have qualified him to say what he did. So just think about how we think about marriage over non-marriage. So if we take Jesus' teaching out of the New Testament and we take Paul's teaching out of the New Testament, what will we have left? But both of those men, we feel, were qualified to say what they did. Now, you just think about that. You think about, how we could look at that I just want you to remember that if somebody's not married, they're still an adult. They still want to have adult conversation. They still want to be part of the church. And that's right. I need a qualified. I think the other time I talked, I said there's 19%. It's not quite. I recounted. It's probably more like 16% of our people here are single in different various regions. And that's from those born prior to 1995. So they are 25 and above is the people I counted. So that's not quite 1/5 of our congregation is somewhere in the single group. Kind of a no-brainer. My next point would be that we have more resources to support marriage and family than singles. And I forget who I was talking to. Maybe to Helen I was talking about this, but I think about that at different times. So nothing wrong. We have a sweetheart banquet for marriage. We have a nice banquet, invite people to come, the couples to come. We have a speaker come in. But then I had to think about it. Well, okay, I remember Luke, Ray, and Arlene coming to that and supporting that. And now all of a sudden, Luke can't come. Well, that's what we say, because he's not married anymore. You still feel welcome, Luke, Ray? You don't want to come? Feel a little awkward, huh, maybe? Right? Feel a little awkward, all right? So, I'm just asking the question, are we doing the best we could? Do we include these people into our ministry? We talk about the youth and want to include them. We want to include everybody. I'm just raising some questions of are we really bringing them into our circles? I just wrote down here. Well, how diligent are you? One of the things you can do as an individual, as a married individual, is to invite them into your house. But maybe you say, well, we have our own little group of people that we interact with. Well, we want to have that person come. Well, it's a way to minister to those individuals. So, if you're the hostess and you're not sure who to have, I think Luke Ray and Earl and our single individuals will be happy to come and to interact around your table, and to hear what's going on in your lives, what is taking place with you. Maybe 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7, Paul talks about singleness there, where he says, "Even I would that all men were even as I myself, but every man hath this proper gift of God, one after this manner and another after that." Here we have Paul is kind of is encouraging, we maybe say singleness. One person wrote, now wrap your brain around this a little bit, and somebody said in the fact of, well, think about how much money, time, and energy are poured into our marriages. Now, if we take all that money and put it into missions, how much can be done? Well, the only problem is, after a while, we won't have any people to go to missions, right? So that's the flip side. But to think about, we say that marriage is the best. It's God created. God put it into place. It's right. It's beautiful. But yet, is being single all that wrong? Paul is encouraging, and to think about what all would have Paul not been able to do if he would have been married at this point. There's a possibility he would have been married at some point of his life, but probably at this point he was not. There are opportunities abounding around that probably are suffering because of lack of personnel. People able and willing to go and to help, and people that would have that freedom of being single. So, Paul here is encouraging singleness. Sometimes we on the flip side, we discourage singleness and saying marriage is the best. Well, I'd say they're kind of equal. If God doesn't call somebody to marriage, are they going to be living their life to their fullest and wanting to bring honor and glory and praise to God? Or are they missing that? All right, we need to move along and finish this up. Another point is, someone said, singles are used as worker bees in the church. You know what a worker bee is? In a beehive, the worker bee, they do all the work, and everybody else kind of sits around and enjoys the work of the worker bee. So they can do the babysitting while the other adults enjoy the Sunday school class or whatever else they may want to enjoy. Because the parents need a break. The parents need a break, and they need to be refueled from their hectic schedules. And besides, singles have lots of time. They have nothing else to do, so they might as well do the work in the church. And then we overlook their gifts that they have, and we don't remember that they are adults. And I would say, even after church, do you talk to them? Or do you think, oh, they have COVID, I better stay away from them. Don't have nothing to say to them. They might make me sick. Do I talk to them? Are they a part of my conversation and willing to converse with those individuals? Some people would say singles are not disciplined in their singleness. We say that singleness is someone said singleness is not a disease and marriage is not the cure for their problems. And sometimes I think probably single people may be more disciplined than married people because they maybe don't have quite the resources, and they are careful how they use their resources, and they make sacrifices for others. They're disciplined. They have jobs to hold down. They have alarm clocks and so forth that we just think married people have. I was drawn to story there right after Jesus' birth, where we have the story of Simeon and Anna in the temple, where and how they ministered to Jesus, well, not to Jesus, but to his parents as they brought the young child in there. Now, it says specifically about Anna that she was a widow. It doesn't say anything about Simeon, but we have two older folks there that were ministering in the temple and were being used of God. My encouragement to us this morning is sometimes we maybe, as a single person, we are holding our breath for marriage to come. Well, Henry Newen said, if we do that, we'll miss the treasure under the ground on which our feet now stand. So as I think about, the singles that are among us, that, am I desiring to glorify God where I'm at? Am I wanting to grow in Christ and become the individual that He wants me to be and to serve Him with all my heart? As a married individual, am I going to see that individual as an equal to me, as an adult, and want to lift them up and to encourage them? Sometimes married people might say to a single, yeah, but your problems are nothing. When you get to be married, then you'll know what real problems are. Well, whatever that problem that single was facing, it's a big problem. Did you ever have it where you had something to tell somebody, and you got telling them, and then they said, yeah, but this happened to me, and you feel about this big, this was important to me, and now you just kind of throw it to the wind and think that your situation is worse or bigger or better than my situation. Where have we found ourselves? And how is we as a church group, as a congregation, ministering to each one around us? We are a community. And as a community, it's going to affect how people see us and how people look at us and how people are affected by us. Hopefully this is close enough to us, but when you drive down through Ephrata, Main Street, probably don't want to do that too often because it gets kind of hectic down through there. But what do you see when you drive down through Ephrata, besides car lights in front of you and car lights behind you? Do you see much attractive as you go through Ephrata? Oh, well, let's see. Might see Scratch. Might see the cookie lady. Might see a couple of barber shops. What else do you see in Ephrata? Is there something really attractive that you want to stop there? Maybe you can stop at what used to be Sprecker's and go in the elevator. Okay. It doesn't have a lot, at least to me, it doesn't have a lot of drawing fact to that I want to come to Ephrata and to spend an afternoon in Ephrata just browsing around. Okay. But now we can drive 4 miles and we can go to Lidditz. And you drive through Lidditz, and what do you see? Is it different? It's different. I think it's because the Burkholders live close to Lidditz, right? No, it's not because the Burkholders live there. But you drive through there, and you see some places you might want to visit. You might want to sit out on the sidewalk and have some lunch. At least you could go to the Tomato Pie and have some lunch there, or go to Wilbur Chocolate and have some chocolates, right? If that is your liking. Do you get the idea? That community there looks different than what the community in Ephrata looks. Not that Ephrata is bad or wrong or stupid. It's just that it's different, and in my mind, it is more attractive. And the same way with us as a group of believers. Let me back up. What makes a difference is because there's people in Lidditz that maybe are pulling together to make it a nice community. For some reason, the things that were in Ephrata kind of migrated out and left over the years. And there's a void there that is not attractive. And I think about that, the correlation between that and us as a congregation, you know, as we bring everybody in, as we interact, as we lift each other up as a community, it's going to flow out to others, and people will be attracted, saying, there's a group of people that love the Lord. There's people that love to be together and to worship together and to just do life together. So I'm not suggesting we go back to communal living and we form a Bruderhof or something like that and have everything in common, but yet the idea that we come together and we care and we love and we want to support each other wherever we're at in our season of life. Remember, if we're holding our breath, we'll miss the treasure under the ground on which our feet now stand. God has something special for us right now where we're at. If you're the oldest person here or the youngest person here, wherever you find yourself in that spectrum, how am I viewing what God has for me? That even includes you young folks. What does God have for you? Are you concerned about that? Are you happy with that? Are you okay with that? I hope so. Because God has a plan for each one of us, and at this point, He wants us to put our energy into us as a body. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Thank you, Lord, for blessing us this morning. Thank you for caring for us and allowing us to come together. And Lord, thank you for each one that took the time to come into your house to worship. May your blessing rest upon us, and may your guidance go before us. And we pray for those also that are facing health situations, and maybe some that we don't even know about, some that are not feeling well. Pray you would bless and guide and keep them and heal them, if not prayed against thy will. So we thank you for your word and for the opportunity to be gathered together and to study it. And I trust that we will grow and desire to grow in you. Thank you for caring for us and for hearing our prayer. Through Christ we pray.